Hmm.
Hey,
Hey. Okay, great. Cool. So, okay, let's just wait for a few more people and I'll start off my session.
all right.
Um,
Yep.
Rishik, are you planning on recording this? Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Send me the drive link after.
Is it gonna be uploaded or just sent on the Avalon server?
I'll probably upload it on my channel.
What's your
Um,
channel? Is it linked with your profile?
my YouTube, I don't think so. Let me check.
No, it's not.
Uh,
It's not, man.
it's not okay, fan. Yeah, but I'll link it and I'll put it up on someplace.
All right, all right.
Okay, cool. How's everyone today? How are you
Great,
guys doing today?
great.
Good, good. Hmm.
Uh,
Okay. Let's wait for another like 2 to 3 minutes and then I'll start off.
Jaidev start नहीं किया ना session. I
What's
just
up?
joined.
हाँ, okay.
नहीं हो
कोई
गया क्या
बात नहीं.
start?
नहीं. Start होगा bro.
अच्छा तो ठीक.
Cool.
Hey,
Good. I'm good.
sounds good.
Yep. How are you doing, dude?
But how's your health, man? I mean, I heard that you had some cold.
No? Oh yeah, it was a while ago, but yeah. I'm fine, dude, now. I'm all good.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that at least.
Yeah. How are you, dude? How are things? How is Shubham? We have a few people here.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm doing good, man. For now, at least.
Okay, great, dude. Great. Uh, hmm. Okay, so the session is going to be just me talking about public relations, um, and just sharing with you some of the insights based on different case studies and just explaining public relations. That's going to be the agenda for today. My name is Jaidev, and I have been studying public relations for about 3 years now. More than 3 years, actually. I have a master's in college. I was essentially part of this team where we used to go compete in different fests all across Bangalore and India. So there, my main role was in for the public relations team. So I had to go through a lot of knowledge and data when it came to public relations. And yeah, so that's where a lot of my insights are coming from. This is going to be a more basic session, however. We're not going to go too in depth with it. So tell me, guys, what do you think public relations is? Anyone?
Like, I mean, isn't it too clear that public relation means your relationship with public specifically?
Right.
Like, what is the relationship with amount of people?
Okay, cool. Amount.
Love
Hmm.
comments.
Sorry, what? Okay, go ahead.
I transfer. Sorry, I gave you 200 coins.
Oh, Nandi is in the other channel, dude.
Oh wait,
English speaking practice, yep.
Yeah. All right. So, how about how your persona is in if
In-
someone, a stranger looks at you, what
right.
does another his friend tell him about you?
Okay, interesting. Sort of, yeah, in I think in a micro sense, that would be more on the lines of word of mouth, but yeah, I sort of get where you're coming at. So let me break it down for you guys. Public relations essentially is how you disseminate information to the different publics that you have. Now, publics as a term, Publics, is essentially the different sort of groups or different audiences you cater to, right? Um, and it's really important on how you disseminate this sort of information and what sort of information you give to the people, especially when it comes to um, information that's available publicly. So public relations is also often thought of as spin, right? Where essentially you're trying to portray the brand in the best light as possible, often manipulating facts and whatever. And essentially what PR attempts to do is represent the the brand's image in ways that appear organic. So a lot of media relations would come under public relations, and it is essentially an industry that is focused on media relations and putting the company's best side out there. Correct. So public relations is there's a lot that goes into public relations, right? And today we'll essentially be covering one segment of public relations, which is crisis management. Um, and if you guys ever have any doubts when it comes to any of these, just feel free to um, feel free to ask me at any point. This let this be somewhat of an interactive session where it's not just me speaking, but if you guys have doubts or questions or comments, whatever, just feel free to let me know. Of course,
Okay.
as long as it's relevant to the topic. So let's get into it, right? So public relations is essentially how you manage your information and how it's disseminated to the public. So every entity or brand and not even, yeah, every entity that operates in the public eye, it's important for them to have good public relations practices, and it's important for them to have um, strategies as well as contingencies when it comes to public relations. So the first case study that we will be talking about is the Maggie case study, right? Maggie essentially um in I forget the date. I think, yeah, it was in 2016. It was around no, not, not, it was not 2016. My bad. 1 second. So I think this was around, I think it was early 2016, if I'm not wrong, or actually 2015, early 2015, where Maggie had a huge issue when it came to lead levels um, in their Maggie, correct? So Nestle Maggie had a major issue where overnight it had to wrestle with the fact that there's a huge amount of lead in their Maggie, and this is not good because lead is essentially poisonous, and there was huge public outrage that um what is this, like Maggie was a household brand at that point, right?
Yeah.
Nestle at the time said that they were very sure that Maggie did not have any problems with its product. And it got and Maggie and even though that Nestle was trying to be very strong in the thing, they recalled a lot of their product, correct? So what a recall is essentially where you've given out your product to, let's say, 1,000 or how many millions of people. What you do is you take back the product and make sure and you dispose of it if it has issues, or you test it, whatever, try to get as much research and data out of it as possible, correct? Recalling is very costly to the company because you lose a lot of money because of it, and also it's a sign that your company is not doing really well, especially in the current scenario, right? So Maggie, during the crisis, it tried to reassure customers. The Twitter account tried to tweet to people and explain to them whatever. They gave out prepared statements on these issues.
Like right now, what's happening with WhatsApp, right?
Sorry.
Right now, that's
Uh-huh.
exactly what's happening with WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, sort of. But the thing is, Maggie's an FMCG company. WhatsApp is what do you call it? Oh, communication or social media application. So the strategies used would be very different. But yeah, the crisis management, maybe bottom line, crisis management situation is happening at WhatsApp. Yes, and this is not the first time WhatsApp's gotten into controversy. It has gotten into controversy earlier as well when it came to the news of fake media, which is still sort of prevalent on WhatsApp. Um, but anyways, WhatsApp concerns more on the lines of privacy and its terms and conditions, whereas Maggie's was a full-on product problem, correct? So what Maggie did was that they tested their own noodles. They essentially were banned as well for a while, but then later on, I believe November in August 2015, they overturned the ban, and in November 2015, they were relaunched back in the market after court mandated tests, right? So there are a lot of cases that are still working their way through the Indian courts. And essentially, how it was handled well, but not well enough. Correct. So, what were the flaws that happened with with the um, with the brand? Does anyone know what happened? Like, what were the major problems? How could Maggie crisis have been handled better? Is anyone like know about the Maggie crisis in detail, or should I get into it myself?
I think you should get into
I
it.
should get into it myself. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So what Maggie did was it well, it got banned firstly, and it had the whole lead issue where it was a major problem. Where even though they tried to refute the arguments, um, the 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 whole problem was that it got banned and it was recalled, etc., etc. Right? The major problem I think when it came to Maggie was I believe that the communication could have been slightly better, right? Public relations is a huge game of communication and making sure you respond to as many people as possible. And Maggie sort of failed to do that. It allowed um, so it allowed like the product itself to be like really like shown badly in the light of the public while firstly getting into the crisis. But what it um, couldn't do is that it couldn't get away from the controversy without like having a proper like ban on the product, and it was just really badly hurt. The thing with Maggie, what Maggie should have done is like it should have had a better media plan, right? It should have been talking to the media constantly and playing and grabbing as many eyeballs as possible, especially when it came back into the market because that's important. What Maggie also did, it was in denial of it having lead, and that was a major problem because it shows that the company wasn't very transparent and it didn't show the company in a good light because it wasn't like okay fine we effed up, but like we're planning on we're doing whatever it takes to make sure that the levels are better.
Would that
And
have actually been a better way to deal with the problem?
Um, potentially yes, but the thing is, when you're a food company and you admit that there was lead in your product, that could also be really bad news, especially in the short term. Correct? But
That
if you have a sort of like commitment towards the future, and to make sure that things are better, that would make a lot of sense. Especially because you recalled most of your product. Correct? Sorry, someone was saying something. Okay. I'll continue, I guess. So Maggie's case study was an interesting one and a one that people can learn from. They handled a lot of the aspects of it very well. From I think the social media was okay, and they got back into the market, which without a massive rebrand, which was good, right?
But wasn't that
Let's.
a risky move?
What do you mean a risky move? I mean, they had to, right?
They
At that point.
Well, they didn't change the brand. They could have done a lot more.
But the thing is,
What they,
the
I
Maggie
think what
it was a household brand, right? It still had that sort of nostalgia factor even when it came back in, and people like still cared about the brand to some degree. They didn't want to die of lead poisoning because they were eating Maggie, but they didn't want the brand to die off as well. So rebranding would just dilute whatever old brand image that they had, and they have to start fresh. So rebranding in this case would not be advisable,
yeah, they
right?
did use nostalgia as a
Right,
part.
exactly. When they, especially when they came back, remember they had all the like, oh my God, I miss Maggie type
Yeah, yeah,
advertisements.
yes,
So
yes,
that was
yes.
like really important for their brand because it touched on that nostalgia aspect of like eating Maggie and how Maggie felt, and it was such an essential even now in households that people can't do without Maggie. Correct. But the problem, what happened with Maggie is once they came back, they had a lot of competition in the market. If you noticed, brands like Patanjali entered into the market. Um, you had Yippee doing really well as well. So on the shelves at least they have a lot of competition. But again, it's Maggie, and people still care about the thing. And if they went with a rebrand, they'd basically be at the same level of like Yippee and Patanjali, or maybe even approximately the same when it comes to brand value. And that's a risk that is hard to take, especially when you already have a brand that did well, but it was only like a small misstep in the whole process. Right now, let's come to a let's come to actually let's talk about the second crisis now, and let's talk about Cadbury, right? So what happened with Cadbury is that it there was in there was there was infestation on 2 bars of Cadbury dairy milk, right? Um, what happened is that when Cadbury was putting out its product, I think some of the products were mismanaged, and this led to like infestation in some of the Cadbury dairy milk bars, right? Now Cadbury is a huge company, and it sort of has the financial capital to make sure that things can get better. And what Cadbury did was it essentially invested a lot in the packaging of dairy milk, right? Now, this when when we come to this issue, the major fault or the major problem was the fact that it was packaged incorrectly and it was handled incorrectly, right? Now, let's say you take away the sort of foil that it has now. There's a huge chance if it's not managed properly, if it's put out in the sun, or if it's put out where it can be attacked by insects, there's a good chance that it will be, right? Because it's very high in sugar content and insects love that. Um, so what happened is when Cadbury did this, they invested around 15 crore in machinery to package the dairy milk bars. It made this costlier by 10 to 15%, but Cadbury didn't hike the price at all. And it ensured and it invested a lot of money in terms of media campaigns, especially with Amitabh Bachchan coming into the scene, right? Now, Amitabh Bachchan's a huge brand ambassador and he's a huge influencer because, well, he's Big B, right? He's the one of the biggest names um in Bollywood, right? And what happened is him being a very trusted face, and once they repackaged and all of that, Amitabh Bachchan as their brand ambassador for many of their advertisements was very crucial for them to like sort of do better in the whole ecosystem, right? Right. Anyway, so Cadbury was another case study, which again FMCG products they didn't have a full-on recall because there was only two packets of Cadbury which had an issue, but they revamped their whole, you know, um, what do you call it? He revamped their whole packaging, which was a huge move by Cadbury. And now Cadbury bars sell really well, and people love Cadbury, and people have no recollection pretty much of the fact that it had infestation problems
All
a
right.
long time
So,
ago.
in both of the case studies, I can see a common sense that many of the big brands they usually use their hype or their nostalgia
Right.
somewhat
Right, they use
to,
the brand value, right?
yeah, they
Um,
do not rebrand because
no, rebranding is a misstep because you only want to rebrand when people have only one notion of your brand, correct? When
In case
people
of
think, oh my
Cadbury,
God,
however, in
Maggie
case of
equals
Cadbury,
Maggie
uh,
equals lead, right? When people have that sort of notion, and that's when you rebrand so that you change the whole name of your company or whatever. Like you do whatever it takes to make sure that it's a fresh start. But when people have different opinions of your company and you can target the people that have a good or had a decent opinion at some point, that's when you don't have to rebrand. That's when you can just improve your marketing or improve your branding to make sure that you sell in the future.
all right. So,
Mm.
okay,
may I
the
put out a
next.
point?
Yeah, go ahead. What's your
I
name?
believe that in case of Cadbury, it was much more controlled because it also has a lot of sub
Right.
products such as Five Star that are not completely branded under the Cadbury
Package.
name, but it
Uh-huh.
is actually
Right,
a
right,
Cadbury product.
right. Yeah, even in the case of Maggie, it had other products as well. But the thing is, the Maggie noodles was the main hit, right? The tomato sauce could go here and there and it's fine. But like noodles is like the main selling point of Maggie. When you think Maggie, you think noodles, right? But when you think Cadbury, you think chocolate, and chocolate can come in many forms. So that way, it was sort of more flexible. And also the thing is, Maggie is you got to understand scale, right? Maggie, there was lead found in its products, and they had to do a full recall because they didn't know which products had lead and what issue there was. They had to make sure that they do that sort of first initial research into their own product and see what's up. Um, and so did Cadbury, I bet, but the damages weren't as high. And when your damages aren't that high, you don't have to, take so much of a risk. Correct? Next case study. Next case study also of a recall, okay, but not in the FMCG industry, in more of the mobile phone industry, right? So Samsung, right, and their flagship smartphone, or at least the flagship smartphone at one point in time, the Galaxy Note 7, correct? Now, the Galaxy Note 7 launched, and it sold really well, and like around more than 2 million products were sold all across the globe, right? But what happened with the Galaxy Note 7, if a lot of y'all remember the memes and the jokes behind the phones, is that it was a phone that was bound to explosions, correct? It was a phone that wasn't safe, and clearly they had to do a recall as well for this phone. So it had a global recall of around 2.5 million Galaxy Note 7 phones, which is huge, and they eventually even discontinued the production and sale of this device, right? Um, so now, when you do this, it puts your top line of revenue in risk. But the thing is, what Samsung did, which is good for the brand, is that it took care of its customers. You can't have customers like, getting hurt because of your phone, right? You can't have customers having burn injuries because your phone like overcharged, or your phone was in your pocket and was too hot, right? It's just something that you can't do. And what Samsung did was they made sure they had a full recall. They made sure that they set up like a lab, right? A test lab, so that they test out what happened with the phone and make sure that things go better in the future, as well as like make sure they figure out what the problem is. And they also have an advisory group created for their batteries to make sure that the next set of phones don't have problems with them. Correct? Um, so, what have we learned from these three companies?
First of all, to
Any
understand the target audience.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. That's You've got to always know your target audience when it comes to public relations or advertising.
And
Um,
to take factor in the media and how it's affecting. For example, in the Samsung, memes were a huge factor, and at that point in time, internet memes were prevalent. While in the Maggie, television was much more
right,
prevalent, and therefore media affected it much more.
right. I mean, it was the same sort of what do you call it? Year time frame. It was the same, but it was different audiences, right? Maggie was more focused in India, which is often a few years behind like the rest of the first world countries. And so something like television or something would be more effective in that sort of case. But they did still have some social media presence. They had a Twitter presence, etc. And they sort of took care of those aspects well. But when came to memes and all that, Maggie wasn't in that sort of sphere, right? Because it was more of a Indian context thing, and memes in India weren't as prevalent as they are, like let's say now, correct? Um, so right. So what we learn from these three case studies is that what's important in public relations, there are a few steps when it comes to public relations, right? First, you make sure you get all the information possible. You understand what happened with your product, what happened with why it was an issue, what's the consumer sentiment when it comes to your product, and how you can better your product, right? This is super important because this is so that you know exactly what's happening, and you can essentially take the steps further, right? And even if you don't have all the information, you have a good chunk of information which you can make decisions based upon. And when it comes to public relations, you need to act fast, right? If you have phones that are burning and bursting in people's hands, or just in general, you need to make sure that your phones are recalled, or you need to at least make sure the videos aren't fake for starters, and then like issue statements, make sure you have a global recall, make sure you do whatever it takes to protect your brand, your consumers, and put those people at the front of your mind when you're taking any sort of decisions, correct? Second thing is that recalls are important, but they're not always necessary. In the case of Cadbury, for example, there are only two bars that had a problem, and this is probably due to some management issues, some what do you call it? Uh, so service issues, some cold storage wasn't there, etc., etc. So what you want to do in these sort of cases is make sure that you have a plan, a contingency plan to say, okay, fine, this is our problem. How do we solve it, and make sure that no other Cadbury bars have a similar issue. So Um, so how you solve it in this case was to essentially improve your packaging and make sure insects cannot get into your airtight and metallic packaging, correct? Um, Other insights that we know is that communication with your publics is also important. Making sure you assure the public by putting out press statements in the media, by engaging with your followers on Twitter, by putting out even a lot of companies nowadays, especially, they put out statements directly on Twitter, right? And Twitter is a very important platform when it comes to public relations, is because Twitter has a direct connect with the media. If you put anything up on Twitter, there's a good chance, especially if it's a relevant trending topic, there's a good chance you would get featured in a newspaper, right? And if you're a big company, these journalists are following you anyways. If they pick up on your beat, if they are, let's say, in the business sector, or let's say they cover public relations news, or they cover like controversy, they follow people, or they will get the news. So Twitter is an essential social media platform when it comes to public relations. Um, Let me think. Is there anything else that I wanted to miss?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, let's actually open it up to questions. Go for it.
So basically, in India, the media channels, especially use the ones in the television, they are biased,
Yeah,
and
to some
often
degree, yes.
they go for the news that makes them more revenue. So if a case in the case an MNC doing fraud would or the having some problem would indeed get some more revenue. So in that case, they might not pick up the statements we put out on Twitter, like
Right.
the case in
Well,
Lebanon. We know
the
about
thing is,
Lebanon, but it was never covered.
sorry, what company did you mention, or what did you mention?
I did not exactly mention the company, but I mentioned an incident. For example, it was a major incident of an explosion in
Okay.
Lebanon, Beirut.
Right. The
It was
the
never
blast,
mentioned
right?
in Indian.
Right. See, the thing is, when it comes to the media, you got to understand how the media works, right? The media will mainly focus on news that is relevant to, firstly, what the channel is about. So let's say an Indian media channel would target Indians, right? And a news from Lebanon may not make the news of that day, especially if there are other more relevant um, TRP generating news on that day. Correct. Um, what also we need to understand is that even though the media is biased, it still is hungry for like information. And if a company is putting out a statement on Twitter, it's not only sending it on Twitter, right? It's also sending it to the relevant journalists in all the media houses, because if you're a big enough company, you either have a company that has a media list, which is essentially a document filled with all the contacts, emails, and what sort of journalists these people are, and they send relevant press releases and information to these journalists. And it's the journalist's sort of duty to make sure that they report on this, because if they don't, someone else will. And generally, if you put it up on Twitter and you send it to them, and especially if you're in the news, there's a good chance that they will report on it, right? There's a very strong chance that they will, and they might even ask you for a comment. And how you handle that is also important, because even as biased as the news is, they'll still want your word, so they can either twist it for their benefit, or at least like show your perspective as well. You
It's just like happened with the Tanish cat, right?
sorry, it's
Tanish
just
cat.
like, what is that? I'm
Um,
sorry.
never heard of
The
it, the
Danish
Tanish cat?
pulled down because of trolls.
No, no,
No,
that
I'm
Hindu
Public
Muslim Tanish cat, man.
backlash.
It was
I
somewhere
don't know.
near Diwali, I
How do you
guess.
spell it? How do you spell it?
Yeah, yeah.
Tanishq
Oh,
released
Tanish
an
ad.
ad.
Okay,
Tanish,
okay. Oh my
the
God. Okay,
brand, yeah,
I'm
man.
sorry,
Jewelry
sorry.
brand.
Oh, the
Yeah,
jewelry
right.
company, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What happened with its ad? I'm not very familiar.
It was, I guess, it came around Diwali somewhere.
Uh-huh. Oh,
And
right. Oh,
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, completely.
It
then
was
there's
it was
this
oh
Hindu
right.
woman who got married in Muslim household.
True. Right. It was a love jihad thing, right? Oh, that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
that's
exactly.
again, right? It's politics getting into brands. And it's crazy. Like, oh man, there's a Kangana Ranaut tweet. Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah, so if Kangana Ranaut tweets about you, yeah, it's a problem. Correct? Um, but yeah, it was at a very volatile time when it came to uh, when this ad came out, I assume, because this was when Love Jihad was trending, where a lot of politicians were like, "Oh my God," and I don't understand it, but yeah, I mean, it's something that they can use to play with the heartstrings of the public, right? Um, and religion and politics have somehow like really messed up the whole ecosystem. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. Right. So what about the Tanishq ad? Sorry, you were trying to make a point. I sort of missed it.
I think it was just citing an example. Like you
Right, so
mentioned Samsung.
right. So the Tanishq ad, when it comes to an ad, you usually just take the ad down if it's too controversial, if it's something that's getting a lot of negative press. But taking down an ad is far easier than like recalling a product. Because ad, I mean, in terms, and it really depends on the volumes, but an ad is easier to like just remove and like sever any sort of losses when it comes to an ad, but recalling a product is more large scale, correct? You got to actually take back the product, destroy it, and all that. Right. Any other questions we have?
I have a question.
Yes. Hi, Anushka.
Yeah, so basically, we discussed three case studies about product related problems, right? But adding on to the Tanishq thing as well, somewhat similar, there was this H&M crisis wherein they goofed up with their modeling. So basically, a young black kid
Oh
was
yeah, I remember
made,
this.
yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
yeah, so he had like a hoodie which said coolest monkey in the jungle, and people went crazy after that. And I think even in South Africa, some protesters went and like trashed their stores as well. So, what must like a company ideally do when they're dealing with a crisis like this that affects a community? So, like you mentioned, in products, they recall or they change their packaging. But in a situation like this, what's ideal?
Okay. Good question, Anushka. And this is another case study that I mean I went through while in college, right? With the H&M case study, the thing is it's their own product. So what they can do is like discontinue the product on their shelves, um, which is somewhat easier than having a product recall because when it comes to a product recall, you need to actually physically take it from like consumers or the suppliers. But if it's in your stores, you can always be like, hey, just put it at the back and we'll get rid of it later, right? So the first thing that, especially when it comes to these sort of products, it's is to have foresight and just to have someone in the room who's like smart enough to be like, at least when they're looking at the ad, be like, wait a second, doesn't this have like some racist undertones? And with fashion companies especially, I feel like fashion companies often go the extra mile to make sure that their sort of fashion is provocative or it's sort of like it they love the attention, correct? um Even brands like Supreme that have like blatantly copied their typeface and blatantly like sell products at an at a huge rate, and the dumbest of products with just their logo which has been copied. These are companies that sort of buy for the public attention, and I feel like even though there might have been a person that said, "Hey, wait, doesn't this have racist undertones?" I'm sure that the company just went, "Hey, just go for it. Like, let's see what happens," right? In this sort of a case, there's not much you can do about it apart from having better foresight and at least learning from these companies' mistakes. Make sure that your product doesn't have racist undertones. Make sure that it doesn't delve into politics too much, right? Especially politics that doesn't help you in any sort of way. Um, it like it's very important to strike a fine balance between attention seeking and getting the attention of your consumer and going on the lines of controversy where it could lead to negative backlash. I think this is a sort of fine balance that companies have to try and maintain, especially if they are going for something like this. And it's important to make sure that this doesn't target people that will always will take a sort of negative stance when it comes to these sort of things. Um, So yeah, that's about it. Like you recall the stuff, you take it off your shelves, you make sure that you have better foresight when it comes to these sort of things in the future, and make sure that you strike a fine balance between trying to get attention and trying to, um, sell your product. Yeah.
Hello. I had one
Mhm.
question, Jaidev.
Yeah.
Like,
Go for it.
we've heard about negative marketing effect,
Right.
helping
Right. Right.
in publicizing. How do you contextualize that? For example, if I cite one example, that would be Whitehead Junior. And
Okay. How are they doing negative marketing? Because I see negative
negative
press,
marketing in the sense, yeah, negative press, not negative marketing. Sorry,
but
I had
it's not beneficial to them, right? In any sort of way or form. I mean, one thing is there that you get the attention of people. People know about your company, but but the thing with White Hat Junior, it's more of a place where they're trying to scale at such a high level that they just let these fires burn. Correct? They don't actively try to solve any of these issues or, make sure that they learn from the mistakes of companies in their own space. Like Unacademy had a data leak, and so did White Hat Junior much later. But White Hat Junior did nothing to do about it. And the problem with White Hat Junior is it deals with kids, dude. If kids' data is leaking out there, that's extremely dangerous because it this is very like vital information that you need to keep safe no matter
yeah,
what sort of audience you deal with, but especially if you're literally teaching kids, you can't let that data slip away like that, right? So White Hat Junior is a company that has a lot of problems just from business level to product level to advertising level. It's just a wildfire at this point, right? And I think at some point it just needs to sort of like calm down and you know sort of revalue the steps that it's taking. When it comes to advertising, at least White Hat Junior doesn't do any negative advertising for itself. It just advertises based on lies and lies that are like very easily caught or understood if you're somewhat intelligent.
The target audience
yeah,
of White Hat Junior are the parents rather than the students they teach.
Yeah, exactly. They
yeah,
are
yeah,
parents. But the thing with the parents is that many parents don't know better, which is a problem. But I think it's on people like Pradeep Punya and others to make sure that this sort of
I
thing
have
is
a
stopped.
question that what would be the correct way to advertise if we were in place White Hat Junior? Because the target audience in this case is often unorthodox and a
Right.
majority of the parents they do not want to teach their children something else that is not directly related to the studies.
I think what you can do is just be honest with your company, with your clients, and like sort of go through maybe the school systems and go through that sort of system to where you essentially sell seats to schools and different places and say, hey, this school is White Hat Junior affiliated. The parents are going to put their kids into schools anyways, right? And now they also have like a White Hat Junior certificate as well if they complete their coding courses. I think that's the way to go about it. That's the way to go. I mean, it's not advertising per se; it's more on the lens of sales. But I think that's how is more of an ethical way to do it instead of like blatantly lying to your um customers by saying, "Hey, look, there's this dude called Wolf, and he's getting mad like racks in Google." That's clearly a lie. He's 13 years old and he's earning more than more. And that sort of advertising just builds false hopes with parents who are anyways often like led by false hopes, and it's just something that is not right. But that again, it comes with ethics of advertising and all of that. I think the best way to do it is just through going through the school system and doing it that way. But I mean, if you want to advertise it, you advertise it rightly, and maybe if your students actually get into Google, or you guys at least have like events with Google, then it would make sense for you to like say, hey, okay, cool, get a chance to win a or get a chance to go to this event for Google or get this Google certificate. That would make sense, in my opinion.
I have another question, if you don't mind.
Mm. Yeah,
That
go for
all of the case studies we have done are major MNCs.
it.
If
Right, right.
our case would be, if we ever start a business, then
Hmm.
our case would be a
Yeah,
smaller scale business. Then how would we
right.
manage any problems in smaller scale? Because a small problem in a smaller scale would be much more deadly for us.
Okay, makes sense. It really depends on the problem. I think the steps when it comes to public relations is still the same. right? You got to do your initial research, got to make sure that you understand the problem well enough to take action. Make sure you talk to your audience, see how they feel, see what sort of reviews they're giving you, see what sort of like opinion, just the general opinion they have of you, and take actions based on that. Improve where you can improve. Essentially, would be my point, or the way to deal with this. Also, having contingency plans when you start off a business is important, or at least when you're at some level of growth, where you say, okay, fine, if this happens, we have this plan, or at least you have some place where you formulate these sort of plans is very important because you don't want to be scrambling when you are in a crisis. You want to be ready, you want to be prepared, you need to have those fire drills with your employees and staff to make sure that okay, fine, this has happened. Okay, what do we do? And it's got to be more on the lines of proactive PR rather than reactive PR, which is what a lot of bigger MNCs do. They are usually reactive, correct? But it's important to be proactive, especially when you're a smaller business, because people sort of expect that of you, and it's obviously more harmful to your bottom line and your company if you're not proactive as sort of company. So make sure you constantly understand the opinions of your audience and make sure that you. Daksh, could you mute yourself, please? I can hear an echo.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, right. Thank you, Daksh. So yeah, that's very important to be proactive, especially in the space, and make sure that you are sort of you're well equipped to handle the sort of crisis that you might be facing.
Don't you think the negative marketing?
Hmm?
Am I audible?
Sorry. Go ahead, homie. Right.
Yeah. Don't you think
Okay.
the controversies, the negative marketing, it helps with the fame, and that fame helps you build the brand? For example, the
Yeah,
Kardashians.
Right. I
that
sort of
also
Kardashians.
happened with Calvin Klein. Like, if you remember, it was Diwali, I think
Mhm.
last year, 2019, and
Right.
Calvin Klein had was this woman. I think it was Diksha, an actress. I don't remember the name right now. And there was this branding going on, and she had similar clothes. I mean, obviously, the people who do marketing and who do advertising, they know it. They know this, right? Like, there will be controversy, and the controversy will help in publicity, gaining
So
more publicity.
right. Again, it really depends on what sort of brand you're trying to build. Correct. It really depends on the sort of image that you're trying to go for in the consumer's mind. I would say, I think I would prefer, especially if you have a brand that is based on like solid results, based on good advertising, positive advertising. When it comes to the negative aspect of things, I feel like you should try to avoid it as much as possible. Sure, it's great for short-term attention, and okay, fine, it might get you a few sales as well, right? But the problem with that sort of marketing is that it's not the sort of impression that you want to generate on people. And although negative sells, it's something that can be very detrimental to your company as well if gone wrong. So it's something that you have to really evaluate and really think about before you do anything. If you're going to Kim Kardashian and stuff, I don't think the stuff that she did was negative per se. I think it was just um, she got a sex
No, I was
debut, right?
trying to say how they rose
Right, exactly.
with
I
all
mean,
those controversies and all, and
right.
they don't
See,
even have a
that's the
marketing
thing
team
is,
and all. They just
it was
upload a picture of there, and then it's like Kylie skin and all.
right. It was like what do you call it? It's sort of it's based on drama, right? It's based on the fact that oh my God, this is going to get clicks or this is going to get views. Um, and it's I mean it's not a great way to grow, but it's a way to grow. And whatever, you have one life. I mean, if Kim wants to do that with her life, I guess that's okay. I don't know.
I will say,
It
man,
works
that
for her.
works, man.
It works, but the
People
thing is,
want drama.
it doesn't.
Like, just see the TRP of Big Boss, man.
True, true. People want drama, but it's also like who you're trying to, what sort of audience are you trying to grow, and what sort of audience you're trying to build. If you're trying to build an audience of like smart individuals, that's probably not the best way to go about it, right? If you want to build a build a very like loyal, diehard, like sort of crazy audience, like the likes of which Salman Khan and Big Boss have, I mean, sure, go for it. Or even roadies or something, go for it, right? That works with your brand. It really depends on you being self-aware of your brand, you being self-aware of who you are as a person and what sort of company you want to build, and taking the steps that you think would be best for your brand.
Yeah.
I
Jay,
would
can you hear me?
advise against it because it's something that goes against my very essence of being. But if it works for you, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, go for it, Sanchit.
Hey, can I ask?
Mm-hmm.
I am very new to this, so what's the difference between
Oh, Naman. Okay.
PR,
Okay.
marketing, sales, and social media handling? Like,
Okay.
I think for a small company, one person might be charged with doing all of it,
Right.
but where do you draw the lines in a bigger company?
Okay. So the thing with the lines are sort of blurred right now, right? There's not very what do you call it, distinct things, because the channels are also often merged and people are on all these channels, and it's important to be everywhere, right? So advertising, especially, I think traditional advertising doesn't work as well as it used to at some point. So a lot of companies are doing social media marketing, so it's sort of easy that way to have like your social media ads as well, and that's how you usually market yourself, right? Traditional ads like TVs, billboards, posters, news, what do you call it, ads, whatever. They aren't as effective as they were at some point in time. So a lot of companies are not doing it, but there are sizable companies that still are and still believe that sort of thing works. Correct. Public relations really depends on the type of brand that you have, but it's important to still have a social media presence, for example. But the thing with public relations is you have to deal with the media directly, so that you get some sort of organic, um, not based on what you say, but based on what a journalist writes about you. That's important for a brand because that's organic word of mouth, and it's word of mouth that reaches millions in a form that isn't an ad. Correct? That's very important because let's say you have an article that says, I don't know, XYZ company has the best like samosas in town. So that's something that can get you a lot of good press because a critic just went to your restaurant or went to your shop and said, okay, fine, wow, these samosas are amazing. Correct? That's still important, and that's even more important, I'd say, or as equally as important as running ads, because what that does is it builds a third, like it shows the fact that someone else outside of your company likes your stuff, and someone outside of your company is going to see that and say, okay, fine, wow, this is really good. Correct. That's very important. So it's sort of like it's a cycle like that. Go for it,
Oh,
Sanjit.
okay. Okay.
Right. Well, my question was just adjoining to this, right? So you said that sales are helped by this, but as much as I am aware that sales are always like a byproduct of trust that you can gain from the customers, right?
Right. So this is how you build
So
trust, right? Public relations is how you build trust. Ads
yeah,
are
but what
how
about
you.
the negative publicity that you were talking about?
Oh,
You know,
that was something different.
people say the positive and like negative publicity is a publicity. That's what people
Right,
say, right?
right.
So
It's like
would you say that helped sales also?
it can help sales. I think so. Yeah, if people like, especially when you deal with controversy. Like, let's take the example of like Padman, the movie, right? There was so much
Mm-hmm.
controversy around it, that people wanted to watch the film. They were like, "What is this all about?" It helps that way where
Right.
uh, like third party people are like really enraged with your product,
Hmm.
and it sort of builds curiosity in people's minds. Be like, "Yeah, what's
Right.
up with this movie? Like, what's going on?"
Well, then
Um,
that will be subjective, right?
but it really depends on context to context, right?
That's really
Uh,
subjective, though.
it's subjective as also really depends on context, right? Because let's say you're a food company and make really bad food, people aren't going to be
Yeah,
curious to try your food. But if you're
of course.
so you got to really know how these things work and how your product fits with the sort of messaging that
Hmm.
is out there for it. So, or
So
yeah.
White Hat Junior, if White Hat Junior just walks on the same path, it
Hmm.
won't be surviving the next 5 to 10 years. What would you say, right? Because
I don't
people are
know.
getting
I
more and more aware. And
I
if
I don't know because
what's your
uh,
prediction? What do you think?
my prediction would be if it's going down the same path, I think
Yep.
hopefully as consumers get more they get smarter about their purchases and smarter about how they work.
Hmm.
I think then it wouldn't survive if they're going down the same path. But if consumers or if its core market is especially is still has the same like understanding of things and like the same like face value belief in the things that they see, then I feel like it still
Well,
could
that's
do well.
something unlikely to happen. Of course, people are getting more and more aware, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. You never know,
yeah.
dude. You never know. That's why I don't
You
like
would
to
know,
predict
like, I mean, yeah,
too
but
much.
like White Hat Junior was just sued for I think a few crores, or
Yeah,
it sued someone. I don't know, but the lawsuits are happening, so I think people will be more aware. And negative publicity is just a short-term game, right? You'll just get
it's
spurts
yeah,
of growth,
it's
but
yep, it's short term. It's not something that builds brand. Like it doesn't build trust
so
between two parties.
I have a really good example to give here. Like you
Mm-hmm.
would know Dhinchak Puja, for example, right?
Yep,
Or
yep,
like people like these. So
yeah.
they get negative publicity at first, but they get really hit by that, right?
Uh-huh.
But if you talk like in the long term perspective, we cannot see them anywhere today. Also,
Right.
when they
Yeah,
first
exactly.
reached to like Big Boss, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now she had a very good chance to convert her negative publicity into positive one, right? She could. So at least you get the chance to be in front of so many people, you get that attention, and then you
Yep.
can convert that negative publicity into. So it's totally how you manage that publicity too. I
True.
think no.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
public relations, coming back to the first point I mentioned, is about
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
you manage
Exactly.
the sort of information you give out there and how
Yep.
you disseminate it in ways that helps your cause.
Sure.
So yeah, about it. Anyways, I think that's about it. It's been a really long session, guys. It's almost nearing an hour now, 50 minutes to an hour. If you have any other questions, feel free to like put it up on which channel would be best for this. Put it up on like marketing maybe and just tag
Marketing is
me.
cool. Yep.
Yeah, that would work. Yep, or main maybe, but let's try not to spam main. And
Marketing
Naman,
is
I
fine,
think
I
I
think.
answered your
Yeah.
question. Anyways, thank you guys so much for attending my session. I think we had a good 40, 50 viewers for the session. Thank you so
Oh, it
much.
was amazing. Thank you, Jaidev. Yeah.
I'll try to do
Thanks
more
for having me.
similar sessions eventually. I think let's see how it goes. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for attending and good night.
Thank you, Jaidev. Good night.
Good night, dude.
Thanks